was contacted about leading a seance to channel the spirit.
Yes, we've been expecting you. Please come join us.
I sense that you have an affinity for the music.
We do.
For the composer.
We would like to have a better understanding of the world he lived in and what music meant to him, to inform our performance, our expression of his music.
That's clear to me. So let's put our instruments down and form a circle. Energy is very important when channeling a spirit. So I never know whether a spirit will join us or not. That is up to them. But we can assist by remaining open in our mind and in our hearts. So the energy here is very strong, and that's very good. So let's join hands. Now, I don't want you to be afraid. This is a warm and safe environment, and no harm will come to you as witnesses, nor will there be harm done to any spirit that chooses to join us. And you must be prepared. The spirit may communicate with us through raps and taps, or it may communicate through me, the medium. All right, so let us briefly close our eyes. Imagine a white light at the top of your head. Imagine it going through your body, out your toes, through the ground, into the center of the earth. We must clear a space for your spirit requests to be heard. Sensing a man. Dark hair. A green and lavish landscape. A countryside. The word bright. Brit. Did your composer spend any time in England?
Yes, he was British, and his name was...
Benjamin.
Yes, Benjamin Britten.
Britain from Britain. Benjamin, are you here with us? Benjamin, have you traveled far to be here with us? I'm sensing him going in and out. He wants to communicate, but he can't find the place, the words.
Maybe if we start with the later question.
Or a stronger one. What do you most want to know?
We would like to know, how do you live in a broken world?
No. Ask again, directly to the spirit, and be as specific as possible.
Benjamin, how do you live in a broken world? You lived through 2 world wars and witnessed the world descend into madness. And yet, you kept writing beautiful music. Tell us, how did you do it?
I sense him, I feel him. We need more energy. We need to channel him closer. We need a vibration of sorts.
What if we played a bit? Would the vibrations of the music help?
I think that's a wonderful idea. How did I live in a broken world, you ask? That piece. When I wrote that piece in 1941, I was living in America. I'd left my home in England 2 years earlier, just before the Second World War broke out. Friends told me of easy experiences and love abroad, and I jumped at the chance to follow them there. Well, by them, I really mean my good friend Auden. But when I got there, I found myself depressed. You see, my trip to America began with my living in New York. To be fair, there were times I loved it. I even wrote to my sister that I seriously considered staying there permanently. But when I moved in with friends to a house in Brooklyn, that was by far the worst. A struggling mass of scheming, shallow sophisticates, bohemian at best. No, that was not me. Having tried the American way of life, I really felt a part of Europe. And I realized gradually that I had roots, just as any composer must, and those roots were in England. And this was the reason why I felt I had to return to Europe, to that still broken world. It wasn't because I had a crisis of conscience and thought I needed to do my bit in the war. No, I'm a pacifist. I disbelieve profoundly in power and violence. And an artist's duty is to create. So I felt I could no longer do that away from where I truly belonged, in England. So I had to return. The rest of my first string quartet, are you familiar with it? That piece of music was really the best thing I had made in America, period. I really must credit California for its inspiration. Despite its busyness, the landscape reminds me of home. Driving down the West Coast reminded me of the Suffolk coast back in England. It may sound strange, but it was in America that I found my English identity. And this piece is like a love letter to England from America. Travels to America. It was 1934 with my mother at my side, and I was on my first international holiday. Salzburg, Munich, and Vienna. I was enchanted. The Viennese waltz, listening to the Vienna Philharmonic play like they wanted to play. It was nothing like this in the London Philharmonic. The sound, the precision. When I got home, I rushed to write a waltz of my own, which became a part of this violin suite. Being in Vienna for the first time was encouraging. But the state then of what was once the gayest capital in Europe was rather unsettling to me. I witnessed firsthand the overture to the war, growing and engulfing Europe. One afternoon, my mother and I walked up to see the little hut where Mozart wrote The Magic Flute. Upon returning to our hotel that evening, we found it filled with soldiers. They were having a grand party or something. Their beastly noise made the place very uncomfortable. After returning from my European travels, I was recruited to compose for films. There I met Wystan Auden. Auden was the most amazing man, a brilliant and attractive personality, and I was swept away by his poetry. He was a mentor to me as we collaborated on these documentary films. Auden introduced me to a circle of people and a way of thinking I had not known before. He was very vocal and spoke marvelously well. Unlike me, I do not easily think in words, because words are not my medium. Words often fail me. I'm always left thinking of what I want to say afterwards. I admired and looked up to him, but next to Auden, I always felt inferior. It was never a conversation with Auden, always a lecture. He often criticized my speaking, insinuating that because I was a poet, or because he was a poet and I a composer, I wasn't meant to talk. When it came to speaking, when it came to music, even when he knew I knew more, he never heard my ideas. In 1937, Auden decided he was going to fight in the Spanish Civil War. I believed the world would gain much more by his continuing to write. But no one could make Auden alter his mind once his was made up. Collaborate again still. But the imbalance in the relationship would remain the same. As much as I hated New York, Auden loved it. As much as I was homesick for England, Auden had sworn it off for good. He knew I was a steadfast pacifist, and still he insisted on battling me. He was more critical of me than anyone else, and made it known. You see, Benji, dear, you are always tempted to make things too easy for yourself in this way. To build yourself a warm nest of love by playing the lovable, talented little boy. If you were really to develop yourself in your full stature, you would have to, I think, suffer and make others suffer in ways which are totally against every conscionable value that you have. You would have to say what you have never had the right to say. God, I'm a shit! Believe that it is only my love and admiration that has me say it. Oh. That was a lot. I think I've lost Benjamin.
Would you like to take a break?
Yes. Please, pardon me. I've not thought of that letter in quite some time. I forgot how upsetting it was to me. It's good to look back and recall the way one's life unfolds, the way others and our experiences shape who we are and change our journey. I suppose, in some ways, I needed Auden when we first met. But once my own creative personality took hold, there actually was no big explosion in our friendship. And I do believe Auden meant well by his letter, with the best of intentions. Auden had resigned himself to being apolitical, believing that the political history of the world would be the same if not a poem had been written, not a picture painted, nor a bar of music composed. He continued to write about the world, but not how to change it. I felt quite the opposite. Upon my return home, I saw the world through my own lens, if you will. While in America, I was able to put a distance between myself and war. And the Germans never did invade England, but fear did. And it followed us into our homes, into our beds. I still remember air raids and masks. But eventually the war ended, and fear was replaced with relief. England had won, and everyone was celebrating. But all I felt was ambivalence. While Churchill, Stalin, and Truman were signing the peace treaty in Germany and celebrating this peace with a feast of turkey and jam, people were literally dying of hunger on the streets. 2 months into this supposed victory in Europe, I saw piles upon piles of bodies rotting at a concentration camp. And 3 months into this victory became the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yes, England had won peace. But at what cost? To me, the world was still broken. And finding myself in such a world, I decided to go to Germany, to the concentration camp at Belsen, with a violinist, Yehudi Menuhin, to perform music for the survivors. And we played not my music, German music. Music that had been taken away from them. We wanted to give it back. What I witnessed at Belsen colored everything that I wrote after that. And when I returned to England, I was compelled to write my second string quartet. So you ask, how do you live in a broken world? For me, it is music. One part of many parts that make up a larger sum. As I said earlier, words often fail me, but music is my part. I am an English composer, but that doesn't mean I write for English people. My identity is one thing, but my audience has always been humanity. What is your part? How will you contribute? Because we are all part of a larger picture. Always have humanity in mind. There's one way we can live in a broken world without it. Keep humanity alive in yourself and in the world.